Lastly, we've got Zamzam. Hi, Zamzam. Zamzam is a co-founder of the Students Organising for Sustainability, the vice chair Muslim Leadership Foundation, and the former national president and vice president of the National Union of Students. She led work on tackling societal injustices, leading campaigns from climate justice, tackling racial injustice, to abolishing to prevent duty. Zamzam has been a leading voice on tackling climate injustice, more especially in the education system, diverting away from a Eurocentric lens in which the climate crisis is currently portrayed. Super looking forward to hear you, Zamzam. Over to you.
Thank you very much. So I feel like there's been like a build-up of like incredible speakers. So I'm sorry to let you down in advance. So a little bit about me, I guess. I think for me as a young person, through my own political journey of becoming like active in like organising in like student spaces, to like being in like high political spaces, making demands. I think I like to always start with like my journey. So I mean, I am a daughter of Somali refugees who came to this country for a better opportunity. I watched my parents essentially make sacrifices that most of my friends' parents never had to make, and constantly were reminded of like what I needed to do to survive essentially and thrive in the world that I was growing up in. And so when I first entered like political spaces and organized spaces, to me, the way in which I saw climate change and environmental work and sustainability framed was always in a very Eurocentric, it was like a very middle class issue, and didn't feel like I had any. I mean, I've probably said a statement that you've probably heard from a lot of young people, of like, I couldn't care less about climate change. I couldn't care less about going vegan, because the reality is the issues that I was facing as a young person growing up were, to me, directly more relevant and more important. So like, whether it was the racism that I was facing in the education system, or the direct Islamophobia that I was facing as a young Black Muslim woman, I think for me, like, those issues seemed more immediate and more important for me to tackle. And for me, like, one of the things that, like, I think the environment, like the movement of like, when we talk about climate work, the way we talk about like actually what we need to be a just and sustainable world, like fails actually to recognize how interlinked all those issues are. And so when we talk about like environmental issues and solving the solutions to that, like those are rooted in like the economical issues that exist in our society. It's rooted in like the societal issues. It's rooted in like the judicial system. Like, it's rooted in everything around us. And so actually we can't, like, so for me, when I started to unpick that and started to learn like my anti-racist organizing that I was doing on campus, was actually pivotal and directly linked to environmental justice. And it was actually in 2016 when Black Lives Matter movement did an action in London City Airport that, to me, it was the first time that I made that direct link between how essentially like racism and discrimination directly links to the climate issue. For those of you that don't know about that action specifically, it was actually like how Black Lives Matter was kind of like formed and born in the UK. But in 2016, there was a proposal to extend London City Airport. And London City Airport is located in Newham, which is actually one of the poorest boroughs in London. I think it's like over 40 to 50% of the local community that live in that area scrape by on less than 20,000 a year. Like, that's the average household income, and we're talking the average person that would use London City Airport. Like, I didn't even know London City Airport existed until that action. But the average person that would use London City Airport was earning 98 to 100,000 approximately a year. And so it was a huge disparity of like, actually like that airport wasn't there for the benefit of that community, but actually what it was doing is it was depleting the life of those people that were living there through like completely ruining their air quality and their living. And actually like understanding how that's one of like many examples when we talk about like when we look at farming and overfishing, of like how actually it is always people from working class communities whose lives are expendable, like whose lives aren't important. And to me, that's how I got into it. And like for me, it was important as an activist, as an organizer, but also as a young person that has come from a world where like the word climate is like something we've never cared about. It was important for me to frame it in a way where I, a younger Zamzam, would understand it and relate to. And so I put together a campaign called Your Climate Change is Racist. And to me, it was a way in which campuses and students could organize and mobilize around it. And so without me like delving too much into like that work, I think I just wanted to set the frame of like why like how I was able to make those links as a young person, and the way in which I grew up. But as to me, SOS UK was founded just a year ago now, but it was an organisation that sat inside NUS UK. So I was president in NUS UK when we formed it out of SOS UK. And the idea behind that was that for me to make fundamental change to the way in which we see issues and the way in which we're able to unpick and question the status quo, like we fundamentally need to change our education system. We need to change in the way in which we learn, because actually we're taught as like, and many of you will know this from the creative sector, is that like actually we're capped in the way in which we can reimagine the world, in which we can see things differently at a very young age. We're told what we can't do rather than what we can do. And so for me, like the work that SOS UK does, especially through the work of Teach the Future, was fundamental in like completely reimagining and stripping our education system. And one of the things one of the examples I like to use is often like, you wouldn't use a horse and carriage to get from like Manchester to London, but why do we have the same education system today that we've had for hundreds of years? And I think like and that's incredibly important to frame and to think of in the context of like actually everything else around us has completely changed and moved forward and have improved, but like in the fundamental way in which we learn hasn't. And then the question then ties back to actually who was education set up for and who does it continue to benefit till this day. And then it comes back to race, discrimination, and it comes back to gender, it comes back to all those discriminatory issues in which we all fight for or like are passionate about and work towards in different aspects. And so through like I guess that the Teach the Future campaign was born, and the Teach the Future campaign is and like I think a lot of the speakers have highlighted this, a lot of the work, and like for me the solution that we need to see is essentially a Green New Deal. It is, and like to me that's the only solution that meets the gravitas of like the issues that's facing us, and like and as a part of that, like in terms of like the economic solution and like reimagining the way in which things and our entire society is funded, and a lot of those comes like with behavior changes, and for me, Teach the Future calls for the education to be completely reviewed. Like we've always said that like the systems are broken, and there's for too long the education system has been patched up. There's been over 6 reviews done by the government over the last 20 years, and not a single education review has ever been implemented. And I think and that clearly states that like it's beyond fixing, like that the issue is quite literally beyond fixing. And one of the and I think for me, like working in youth spaces and working with like the UK climate strikers over the last couple of years, but also like working on a global scale with like European students' unions across Europe and also on a global level, it's made me realize that like actually like there is a point right now of like hope where like young people are mobilizing and are quite literally unapologetically and unafraid to challenge where power lies. And I think, and like there's many reasons for this, but for me, I think one of the like most powerful reasons to me is that I can start a movement right now, this very second, just by tweeting a hashtag and making a call to like thousands of young people around the globe. And to me, like, and that's not something that has been accessible to generations in the past. And so for me, I feel directly connected to and feel like I have a global duty to the issues that are happening in, like, for example, like the protesting that's been happening in Nigeria over the last couple of weeks. I feel like I have directly been communicating with and knowing and understanding what's going on live in Nigeria, on those streets, on those protesting. And I think for me, that's incredibly important. That's the power of like organizing for young people now. And so the idea of like we like tying ourselves to like trees, or like the whole like the thought process behind like what a climate activist looks like has completely shifted. And I think young people now are more aware than ever before of like how intersectional the work that needs to happen is. And that's incredibly important. And I think that's really needs to be reflected in the storytelling of like how the soaps that we watch. Because actually for me, like the 1 hour a day where I switch off and I want to watch EastEnders is so incredibly important for me, because like I'm watching it because I want to switch off from like whatever work I've been doing, whatever stress I've been dealing with, whatever campaign I've been dealing with. But for that 1 hour, I live another person's life. I live another person's issues. And like those things that I hear and I listen to and I understand, like become normalized almost in my head. And like subconsciously I soak in because like I'm so invested in those characters. And so actually like as writers, like you hold this incredible power, because you can quite literally write a narrative of and a story that I will then subconsciously influence or even talk about or spark a discussion of. And I think that's how you influence change. That's how you completely mobilize a generation of people. And I think, and like there are thousands of people who have like spoken about how like little clips that they've seen, or like I mean, the people that they've seen on TV, or like the media or the surroundings of what, or have like completely shaped what they do, who they are, and like the work that they do. And so for me, I think I've like way gone over my time, but that's usually what I do, so I apologize. But I think for me, like that's the power that you all hold as like as creatives, as artists, like to be able to think outside that and to question the status quo, and to like be unapologetic and like unafraid in that, because there is no fun in playing by the rules.